Hi, we're Jordan and Jim. 2 years ago, we left everything we owned and everyone we loved to move to Cornwall and fulfill our dreams. We bought a plot of land and for the last 2 years have been living on site whilst building our house. Follow our journey as we develop this adventure together, one vlog at a time. Hello everybody, happy Sunday. Finally, we're here to bring you a house build update. We're joining Jim with the plastering today and he's going to give you a little 101 on plastering and how he does it. First of all, we're going to catch you up on a bit of dot and dab and then I'm going to hand over to Jim and he can explain it all.
So you start with plastering done in 2 coats. Your first coat kind of takes out all of the imperfections in the wall, so when the plasterboard doesn't quite sit flat, or plaster beads, because you've got this bead sits up 3mm from the plasterboard, so you take about 2mm of that out with the first coat, and then before it sets, so you get it all on and get it as flat as reasonably possible. You don't have to go too crazy polished flat with it, because before it dries you go on with the second coat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the first coat gets rid of the imperfections, and then the second coat
is what gives you that smooth,
okay,
plastered finish. Now I like to say I've never had any training in plastering, so if anyone wants to criticise my plastering, go away.
Or if anyone's got any extra tips.
Or anyone's got any extra tips. But I may not be the quickest, but I make a flat wall. Yeah, so you start with, I normally do slightly thicker mix on my first mix. It looks like a thick mousse of a really stiff custard. So I always start, I mean, I suppose a lot of this comes down to personal preference. I'm sure a lot of plasterers do it differently. I don't know, maybe they don't, but what I do is I start on an edge, a corner, and I like to work from left to right, because I naturally curve, like that's the natural curve. So I'll start, say if I was doing, none of this works.
It's all angled.
But that big one,
yeah.
Start in that corner, and I'd come along like this,
okay,
spreading it onto the wall, go along, make that flat, and then onto the next bit, and just keep working round in a circle. So what I've done with this wall is I've started there, because I can work up and left, and got to the top here, and then gone onto this bit, because this is all connected. So I have to do that wall while ceiling, and that ceiling all in one, because it's all connected with these nice round pieces. Rounds are slightly harder again, because your trowel is not round.
Yeah, the curve is coming up on the camera actually. You can see it.
So you do. Well, this is how I do it anyway. What I did with the curve was, when I was dot and dabbing, you look at me for a sec?
Yeah.
When I was dot and dabbing this wall, the little bit of adhesive I had left over that wasn't enough to stick to the next board, I spread in here a day or two before I'm plastering, so that it starts that rounding process. So all I've got to do is a 3 or 4mm skim over that round. Otherwise, if you try and put all of that roundedness in with the plaster is really thick in the round, but still only 3mm thick here, so it dries out really quick and stays really wet here. So you're trying to put more pressure on this bit and then go less pressure on the bend, and it just makes it really hard. So if you take that curve out with the adhesive or bonding or old plaster first, before coming in for your actual skim coat on that section. And to anyone that doesn't know much about plastering, you put corner beads, these metal preformed,
I'll film it as a B-roll.
Beads go on the edges so that you're not trying to build a straight corner out of plaster. It gives you a set edge, an easy edge to work up to, and any crack in plasterboard where you've joined two boards is covered with, we call it scrim, but plasterboard tape. This meshed, self-adhesive meshed tape covers the joints, and it stops the plaster cracking on on the joints of the plasterboard. So once I've got plaster on the whole section, I grab my new tool, which I had never used before doing this house, that my brother-in-law bought me. It's a soft plastic straight edge. It's called a speed skim. I'd never used one before. This isn't the best spot to show it because I can't actually fit it in that way.
True.
But you get the plaster on pretty rough, and then you could just give the whole thing a quick smooth out. It saves you a load of time on going round and smoothing it out with the metal trowel. So you don't need one of these. This is just handy when you're doing lots of big areas. Yeah, it doesn't quite fit. It's slightly too big for this space, this one, but it worked nicely on the other big ceilings. So.
When you come to do the wall?
Potential, yeah. Oh, I used it on the big ceiling. On the, well, I said, on that big, the square ceiling, I used it.
Are there any tips for like getting it out onto your...
Yeah. So I load out about 3, I've only got a small trowel, but 3 small trowels worth, and then what I do, move it around a bit, put a bit of life in the plaster, and then when you're loading your trowel up, trowel goes on and you kind of, half the movement's done with the left, half the movement's done with the right, if that makes sense. So you put about that much on the edge, and then that goes on. But you flick with this wrist and that wrist. That's a really hard one to describe.
you just know it.
It's something, the first few go all over the floor, like when you're learning, and you eventually get the hang of it. There are loads, if anyone wants to give it a go, of like tutorials on YouTube. Plenty of people that are far better than me at describing and far better than me at doing it. What did I do? So when I started, Matt gave me the garage ceiling because it didn't matter what it looked like, it just needed to be done for fire safety. So I started on that, and then I did a garage wall, and then eventually he let me loose on cupboards in other people's houses, and then onto actual walls once I started to get the hang of it. People think plastering's a lot harder than it actually is. Once you know the process, it's really not that hard.
When did you start plastering? Years ago?
Yeah, years. Your dad taught me before, I mean, gun here.
Yeah, do you want a staple gun? That's really moving, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here, it's here.
Thank you. When did he teach me?
When you were 16 or later?
Later, it was once we had come back.
So once you were like...
Well, I mean, when did we...
24?
Yeah, 24, so... I mean...
8 years?
That sounds like I've been doing it for a long time, but if you actually put together everything I had plastered...
Yeah, you're not just a plasterer, so...
Yeah, it's I do a few walls at the end of the job, normally, do you know what I mean? I do enough to finish an extension, or...
Do you reckon you might have done about 8 jobs in that time? 10 jobs, maybe?
I've probably done enough plastering to have done this house once or twice over.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
So by the time you finish this house, you're going to be...
I would have nearly doubled how much plastering I've done.
Yeah. I think some people are worried about it because it's very seen.
Yes. And it is, like, if you want to have a go at it, don't have a go, you know, in your living room or your kitchen or something that's going to be seen. Do somewhere where it really doesn't matter if it comes out dreadful. Have a go on your, you know, your airing cupboard or your shoe cupboard. Or your garage, because they're not normally plastered anyway. And then I've got a little bit left over here, so I'm also going to do, I'm going for it. Saves throwing it away. Got a little reveal to do.
Yes. Is there an order in which you have to do it?
Ah, as in what walls you do?
Yeah.
That's a good point. So, you always start with your ceilings. And well, that's the way I was always taught to do it. And I think it's because if you then drop any on the walls as you're plastering, quite often you'll, you know, bits like this will drop down onto the wall. That then gets covered by you plastering the wall, but you scrape it off to plaster the wall. Whereas if you've done the walls first and then you plaster, you might not necessarily see the drips you've left on the wall. So always start with the walls, sorry, with the ceilings, and then you work with opposing faces. So only if you really have to would you plaster something like that and that at the same time, because you've got two wet faces in one corner, and that's then really hard to get a nice, it can be done, but it's really hard to get a nice finish in that corner, unless you've got specialists, like you can buy corner trowels and things like that. But it's a lot easier, especially when you've got this much to do. Just do opposing faces. So I've done the ceilings, and then next I'll do like that wall, that one, and that one. And then after that I'll do this big one along here and that face, and then I'll do that face and that face. So you're always working in those two and those two.
How much time do you have to get it on before it starts drying?
So this is starting to set a bit now, but still plenty usable. So I don't know, how long have I been doing this?
I've been filming for 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I was going for quite a while before that, so probably I've been going for getting on an hour, maybe 45 minutes. I mean, a plasterer who works, his sites don't really plaster anymore, but if you're working by the metre on a site, if you're doing it on price, they'd have got through far more plaster than I've used in a lot less time.
Okay. But for it's still workable, like you...
Still fine, yeah. So what you can't do, unlike, I mean, you're not supposed to with cement either, but what you can't do is add water to that and mix it up to use it again, if that makes sense. Once this goes off or starts to set, that's it. You just let it go. So that's that's pretty stiff now. But I'm going to use it because I've got a patch here. On this bit.
Yeah, so you've missed a bit and then you've done the...
Yeah.
How long do you have to wait before you can then do the top coat?
So now that's not really timed. That's done on the feel, which then makes it very hard to you to explain to someone over the internet when to touch it and when to leave it. So before I do another coat, what I'll do is I'll go round cleaning up the edges and filling in some of the little divots on the bits I've already done. So I won't just go straight onto a top coat now. I'll go around with my little paintbrush full of water and make it even smoother than it currently is. And the other option is to dry line, which I've never done, but I also don't really like it. the walls get damaged a lot easier. It's not as hard a finish. That's where you just tape and put filler over the joins. Basically, you use feather edge. This is square edge plasterboard. If you're dry lining, you'd use feather edge, which has a, rather than it just being a square board, it has a chamfered edge, so it gives you some tolerance to fill. And then you go along and you fill all of the screw holes and all of the joins, and then give it a quick sand over. So a lot of big sites.
What, and then you just paint on that? And
then you just paint straight on it. So that bit of board is just your finished surface, and you paint straight on that, and then you've got a strip of filler, about that big, but because the boards are chamfered, it's still smooth, and then a similar thing in the corner.
So lots of big news sites do that? Pretty
much every news site.
And I know America does that a lot.
Yeah. Plastering is much less of a thing. Yeah, I don't know if you can see from there, but the edges dry out way quicker than the middle, so the middle's still workable. If I did that from the corner, it'd tear a load of chunks off the corner, because the moisture gets pulled out into these boards and into the edges. So what I do, flick a little bit of water up into the corner, run the trowel along, and then come out from there and smooth out that edge. I don't know if you jump up here, you can get a little, or maybe if you zoom right into what that looks like, and then I'll show you what it looks like once I do this.
Yeah, wait, it's just focusing, and then I'll turn the autofocus off. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, bit of water on it. Put it out that way. And then, the difference there?
Yeah.
So we do that all the way round and come out to the middle here. That's what happens, look. See that bit?
Yeah.
I had a little dry bit on the trowel there. As I came along there, I picked up one of the dry bits, and then as I've gone like that, it's torn part of the plaster. So I'll take that bit off the trowel. Give it a little squidge and a smooth over. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect because this is gone.
Yeah.
Because this is only first coat. So this just has to be flat, but it doesn't. I don't have to perfectly fill in all of the holes, because this is only to take out the big imperfections. The actual polish, smooth polish coat, is going to go on the final coat. The other thing to mention is, I'll mention it when I get to the lights, I guess, but generally plasterers hate electricians, and electricians hate plasterers, because they're two trades that clash, because not all plasterers, not all plasterers will clean out the holes, so you're left with this hard ridge of plaster around the edges of light fittings and of switches and sockets, which means they have to try and clean out the plasterer's mess on the flip side of that, not all electricians will do such a neat job with these cabling. So what Simon's done is he cut all his ends down and he's wrapped them up super nice so that I've got a really, I can just run my trowel straight over the top of that. I've got nothing in my way. And so, as repayment, what I'll do is I'll clean out all of these for him, so that all he's got to do is push the light straight in. He hasn't got to try and cut thick hard plaster. I heard horror stories of arguments on site, or an argument on site between a plasterer and an electrician, where the electrician had just left all of his tables hanging out of the wall. So in pettiness, the plasterer had filled the boxes with plaster and smoothed it. So the electrician came in grumpy and basically smashed all of the plaster. So the electrician smashed everything around the edge so that he could get his cables back. Plasterer then had to come back in and fix it. So what he did was he cut the tails back.
I can't see it because it's near the light.
The plasterer the plasterer then cut the tails back here and replastered it so that the cables were no longer long enough to get to the back of the fitting. It ended up in a big petty dispute, because
which just means both of them get hard.
I mean, yeah, you end up cutting your nose to spite your face. Do you know what I mean? It's they both made loads of extra work for themselves, but if one of them just took a little bit of care over, like a little bit of respect for the other one's work, but that all comes down to, or what I think that comes down to, is they are paid for how much they do, not how well they do it. Mm-hmm. So the electrician just needed to get the wires in. He doesn't care whose job comes next.
Yeah.
So he throws the wires in, because the more wires he can get in, the more he's going to get paid. So the plasterer comes in and he doesn't get paid to sort out cables. He gets paid to put plaster on the wall. So that's big site stuff, not the kind of site I used to run. That's a bit of a mess there.
Yeah, looking at that.
Plaster up there.
Do you not mind plastering all the curves and all the angles and...
I'd rather just do a nice big flat wall, but...
Would you?
No one else is going to come in and do this for me, so I'd rather do it. I'd rather not spend ages doing it. I just want it finished and on to the next bit.
Knowing you've got so much plastering to do as well.
Well, it could be thousands of metres of it. I don't know. It's a hell of a lot.
I'll put your music back on now I think until we mix up and do the top coat.
Done with story time.